Real Reddit stories. If you love wild things and crazy drama, hit that subscribe button and drop a like to help more people find the madness.
My daughter signed away her baby, so we raised him as our own. 25 years later, she showed up to extort us for money. When my daughter Mildred was 18, she got me a gift. It was a pregnancy stick with 2 pink lines. I sighed. She had always been more on the careless side, the type to never think things through. I couldn't even get a word in before she started hollering, and I'm not getting a baby termination, so y'all better step up. For context, by y'all, she meant me and her father, and by step up, she meant dedicating our lives to raising her baby for her. Well, me and my husband love babies and always wanted to have more children, so we agreed pretty quickly, and soon Mildred was practically shoving forms in our face. She insisted on signing away her parental rights because she didn't want any responsibility in case my grandparents ran into money problems, as if she had any money to give. Anyway, Philip ended up being an amazing son. He was curious and kind, never asked without saying please, always offering to help my husband with his work. Unfortunately, he was an accountant and could never take him up on the offer, but the gesture was unbelievably wholesome. And when he turned 10, he started asking about his bio mom, our daughter. It was clear he wanted a relationship with her. Every Mother's Day, he'd write 2 cards and had a stack of envelopes labeled "to mommy" in a box under his bed. Plus, he tried to contact her and asked for a meeting over 12 times when he turned 11 years old. Me and my husband always tried to distract him from this, to reassure him that we loved him as our own. But it wasn't until the 13th time our daughter shut him down that he finally gave up and started living his own life. I did everything I could to make him feel welcomed into our home. Me and my husband both gave up our savings so he could go to college without getting a part-time job. We made sure that he went on holiday at least once a year, with just one of us tagging along with him. By the time he was 22, it seemed like he had forgotten all about his mother. She was still talking to us, but never asked about me or tried to have a mother-son relationship. I was always extremely grateful for this, because by this point, I loved Philip more than I could ever love Mildred, and she purposely kept us from her life too. She had us blocked on every social media platform, including WhatsApp. All I knew was that she had married someone new across the country. Good riddance. My son ended up dropping out of college because he and his friends had started a car cleaning business. His marketing was so good that business soared, and he always gave me and my husband 15% of all his earnings to thank us for being so amazing. There was just one thing I hated about him. He was dead set on paying us back so we could experience what we missed while raising him. It ticked me off a lot because I never wanted him to feel like that, and we enjoyed raising him more than we would have enjoyed doing anything else. A year later, he met the love of his life, Amber, and she was a sweetheart. Little did I know, his life wasn't going to be all sunshine and rainbows, because as we all sat around the table for Thanksgiving dinner, he got a call. I figured it was a new client, and my face was practically beaming with pride. He even put it on speakerphone, but as soon as he picked up, my heart dropped. It was Mildred. She asked how he was doing, and he kept all the answers short but firm. It was at that moment that I realized he had truly stopped loving her. She asked to meet at a restaurant, and he said he'd think about it before hanging up. Honey, me and your father can go with you? I offered, because his eyebrows were furrowed like he was actually considering it. That would be amazing, he exclaimed, his cheeriness lighting up the entire room. I myself knew she was up to no good. She hadn't tried to establish a relationship in 25 years, and I knew what she was like. When we sat down at the fanciest restaurant in town, she didn't even hug my son or ask how he was doing. So what's the meal budget for tonight, was the first thing she blurted. My son just shrugged his shoulders before saying whatever, and she ordered the lobster ravioli with a bottle of white wine. When she caught sight of my son's lock screen, she pounced. Oh wow, is that your girlfriend? She's beautiful. Her voice sounded so fake that the entire table was quiet for a few seconds before she spoke again. It reminds me of me and my recently divorced husband. We used to be so cute. I asked her what happened, and she told me she had cheated on him. My son rolled his eyes. Stuff just happens sometimes. Anyway, I'm really struggling to find a job right now. Do you think you could help me out? I guess. Great. What she said next shook me to my core. I'm going to need around $14,000 to secure an apartment. I'll send you my bank details, so make sure to send the money before the weekend. I expected my son to get angry, but instead he just nodded and waited for the food to arrive. So I opened my mouth to speak and rip her a new one, but then I felt a pinch under the table. It was my son, so I just stayed quiet. Little did I know, my sweet son had an ace up his sleeve, and my daughter was finally going to suffer the way she deserved. When we got home that night, I was still fuming. I paced around the kitchen while Larry made us some tea, trying to calm me down. Philip sat at the counter, scrolling through his phone like nothing had happened. I just don't understand how you can be so calm about this, I said to him. That woman abandoned you, ignored you for years, and now she just waltzes back into your life demanding money? Philip looked up from his phone with that same mysterious smile. Mom, trust me, I've got this handled. What does that even mean? I asked, exasperated. He showed me his phone screen. He'd opened his banking app and was in the middle of making a transfer to an account I didn't recognize. The amount? Exactly $14. $14? I asked, confused. Yup, she asked for money. She didn't specify how much in her text, so I'm giving her money. $14 should cover a nice lunch, right? Larry burst out laughing. I couldn't help but join in. The tension in my shoulders finally released. My boy wasn't a pushover after all. You're something else, kid, Larry said, patting Philip on the back. The next morning, I was making breakfast when Philip's phone started blowing up with notifications. He was still asleep, but his phone was on the kitchen counter charging. I wasn't trying to snoop, but the messages kept popping up on his screen. Where's the rest of it? One read. This isn't funny, came another. I need that money by tomorrow. I woke Philip up and showed him. He just chuckled, typed something quick, and went to take a shower. I couldn't help myself. I peeked at what he'd written. Sorry, budget's tight this month. Hope the $14 helps. The calls started coming in around noon. Philip ignored them all, letting them go to voicemail. By evening, there were 17 missed calls from Mildred. Philip listened to the voicemails with the phone on speaker so Larry and I could hear. Each one got progressively angrier and more desperate. You think this is some kind of joke? She screamed in the last one. I'll show you what happens when you mess with me. I started to worry. Maybe we should call the police? That sounded like a threat. Philip shook his head. She's all talk. Always has been, right? I nodded, but I wasn't convinced. I knew Mildred better than he did. She could be vindictive when she didn't get her way. 3 days passed with no word from Mildred. I started to relax, thinking maybe she'd given up. Philip went back to work at his car cleaning business, and life seemed to return to normal. Then it happened. I got a frantic call from Philip around lunchtime. Mom, she's here, at the business, making a scene. I grabbed my keys and Larry, and we raced over to Philip's shop. When we pulled up, I could hear the shouting from the parking lot. Mildred was standing in the middle of the reception area, screaming at the top of her lungs while customers looked on in horror. You owe me. I gave birth to you. The least you could do is help your mother out. Philip was standing there, calm as could be, hands slightly raised in a placating gesture. Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. You're disrupting my business. business. Ma'am, I'm your mother, you ungrateful little poop. I stepped forward, ready to intervene, but Larry held me back. Let him handle it, he whispered, and handle it he did. Philip walked over to Mildred, still completely composed, and spoke in a quiet, firm voice. You need to leave now, or I'll call the police. Go ahead, call them. I'll tell them how you promised me money and then went back on your word. I saw Philip's assistant Ralph discreetly picking up the phone. Good boy. Philip gently took Mildred's elbow and started guiding her toward the door. I never promised you $14,000. I said I would help you out, and I sent you what I could afford. Now please leave before you embarrass yourself further. What happened next shocked me. Mildred reached into her purse, pulled out her phone, and shoved it in Philip's face. See this? I've been recording this whole thing, and I've got the text where you agreed to help me. I'm going to post this online and show everyone what kind of son abandons his mother in her time of need. I later found out she'd only started recording halfway through the confrontation, after she'd already been screaming and causing a scene, but the damage was done. She stormed out, nearly knocking over a display of car air fresheners on her way. Philip spent the next hour apologizing to customers and offering discounts on their next visit. 3 people canceled their appointments on the spot. I could see the worry on his face, though he tried to hide it. That night, as we sat around our kitchen table trying to figure out what to do next, Philip's phone dinged with a notification. It was a link from Amber. Mildred had posted the video on Facebook, edited to make it look like Philip was coldly turning away his desperate mother. She'd added a long caption about how her son, who ran a successful business, refused to help her avoid homelessness. The comments were brutal, people calling Philip heartless, saying they'd never use his services, some even threatening to leave bad reviews on his business page. This is slander, Larry said, his face red with anger. We can sue her for this. Philip shook his head. That would just drag this out longer. I have a better idea. The next day, Philip posted a video of his own. He sat in his office, looking directly at the camera, and calmly explained the situation. How Mildred had given him up at birth, how she'd rejected his attempts to connect as a child, how she'd suddenly reappeared demanding $14,000 after 25 years of no contact. He showed screenshots of their text exchanges, including her immediate jump to asking for money without even asking about his life. I don't hold any grudges, he said at the end. I wish her well, but I won't be manipulated or bullied, and I won't let false accusations damage the business I've built through hard work and honest service. The response was overwhelming. Comments flooded in supporting Philip. Customers posted about their positive experiences with his business. The tide of public opinion turned quickly, but Mildred wasn't done. A week later, Philip got a call from the local police department. Someone had filed a report accusing him of theft. According to the report, Philip had verbally agreed to loan Mildred money and then refused to follow through, which the complainant was trying to classify as theft by deception. The officer who called sounded skeptical about the whole thing, but said they had to investigate any formal complaint. Philip had to go down to the station to give a statement. I went with him for moral support, and I've never been prouder of how he handled himself. He calmly explained the situation, showed them the text messages, and even pulled up the bank transfer of $14 he'd sent her. The officer actually chuckled at that. So you did send her money, just not as much as she wanted? Yes, sir, Philip replied. I never specified an amount in our texts. She asked for help, and I helped as much as I felt comfortable with. The investigation was closed pretty quickly after that. The officer told us off the record that these kinds of disputes weren't really police matters anyway. They were civil issues at best. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. Mildred must have realized she couldn't get to Philip directly, so she changed tactics. She showed up at our house one afternoon when Philip wasn't there, just me and Larry. I almost didn't recognize her standing on our porch. She looked terrible. Hair unwashed, clothes rumpled, eyes red from crying or drinking or both. Can I come in? She asked, her voice small and pitiful. Please, Mom, I just want to talk. Against my better judgment, I let her in. Larry was in his study working, and I called him down. His face hardened when he saw Mildred sitting at our kitchen table. What do you want now? He asked. She burst into tears, big dramatic sobs that shook her whole body. I've made such a mess of everything, she wailed. I just needed help, and I didn't know how to ask properly. I handed her a tissue, keeping my distance emotionally. I'd seen this performance before. Why did you file a police report against Philip? I asked. She wiped her eyes. I was desperate. I really am about to be homeless. My ex-husband is cutting me off completely, and I have nowhere to go. So you thought the solution was to try to get your son arrested? Larry's voice was ice cold. I wasn't trying to get him arrested. I just wanted someone to make him help me. She turned to Larry, her eyes suddenly calculating. Dad, you understand, don't you? You always understood me better than Mom did. I saw something flicker in Larry's eyes. Doubt? Sympathy? Whatever it was, it worried me. He has the money, she continued. His business is doing so well. What's $14,000 to him? It's nothing, but it would save my life. Mildred, I said firmly, Philip doesn't owe you anything. You signed away your parental rights. You rejected him when he reached out to you. You can't just show up 25 years later demanding money. But he's my son, she cried. No, I said, standing up. He's our son. We raised him. We loved him. We were there for every skinned knee, every school play, every heartbreak. Where were you? She turned to Larry again. Dad, please, talk to him for me. He'll listen to you. To my horror, Larry hesitated. Maybe we could help you out a little. Not the full amount, but something to get you on your feet. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Larry, no. She's manipulating you. She's still our daughter, Margaret, he said, using my full name like he always did when we disagreed about something serious. And what about Philip? What message does that send to him? Mildred saw her opening and pounced. Philip doesn't need to know. It could just be between us, a family helping family. I was about to argue further when we heard the front door open. Philip was home early. He stopped dead in his tracks when he saw Mildred at our kitchen table. His face went completely blank, that same neutral expression he'd had at the restaurant. What's going on here? He asked quietly. Your mother came to apologize, Larry said quickly. Mildred nodded eagerly. Yes, I feel terrible about everything. I was hoping we could start fresh. Philip looked at me. I couldn't hide my skepticism, and he picked up on it immediately. Is that really why you're here? He asked Mildred. She nodded again, eyes wide and innocent. Of course. What other reason would I have? To try to get money from my parents since you couldn't get it from me. Her face changed so fast it was almost comical. The tears dried up instantly, replaced by a cold glare. Well, what did you expect? You're living the high life while I'm suffering. Someone in this family needs to step up. Philip just shook his head. I think you should leave now. Not until I get what I came for, she snapped. And what exactly did you come for, Mildred? He asked, his voice dangerously calm. She looked at Larry. Dad was just about to help me out, weren't you, Dad? Larry looked uncomfortable. I said we might be able to help a little. Philip's face fell. I could see the hurt in his eyes, the feeling of betrayal. It broke my heart. Dad, she's using you, Philip said quietly, just like she's trying to use me. Larry looked torn. I put my hand on his arm. Listen to him, Larry. He's right. Mildred stood up, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. Fine, be that way. All of you. I'll figure it out myself, like I always have to. She stormed out, slamming the door behind her. The silence that followed was deafening. Philip wouldn't look at Larry. Larry stared at the floor, ashamed. I'm sorry, son, he finally said. I don't know what came over me. She's always been able to wrap you around her finger, Philip replied, his voice flat. Even after everything she's done. He turned and walked out of the kitchen. I heard his car start a few minutes later. He didn't come home that night. The next few days were tense. Philip was distant, focusing on damage control for his business. The video Mildred had posted had caused some problems, even though Philip's response had helped. A few negative reviews had appeared online, clearly fake but harmful nonetheless. Larry was beating himself up for almost falling for Mildred's manipulation. I tried to reassure him, but the truth was, I was disappointed too. After all these these years, he should have known better. Philip finally came over for dinner about a week later. He seemed preoccupied, checking his phone constantly. Everything okay? I asked as we cleared the dishes. Yeah, just waiting for a call, he said vaguely. The call came just as we were having dessert. Philip excused himself to take it in the living room. When he came back, he was smiling that calculating smile again. That was Amber, he said. Everything's set for tomorrow night. What's tomorrow night? Larry asked. I've invited Mildred to dinner, a peace offering. I nearly dropped my fork. You what? After everything she's done? He nodded. I think it's time we resolve this situation once and for all. I'd like you both to come too. Philip, I don't think that's a good idea. I started. Please, Mom, trust me on this. I know what I'm doing. There was something in his eyes that made me believe him, so against my better judgment, I agreed. Larry did too, though he looked as uncertain as I felt. The restaurant Philip chose was even fancier than the last one, a place where a meal for four could easily run $500 or more. When we arrived, Mildred was already there, looking much better than she had at our house. Her hair was done, she wore a new-looking dress, and her nails were freshly manicured. So much for being broke, I thought. Philip greeted her with a hug, which surprised me. She looked surprised too, but quickly recovered, playing the role of the delighted mother reunited with her son. I'm so glad you called, she gushed. I've been feeling terrible about how things went. Water under the bridge, Philip said smoothly. Let's just enjoy dinner, shall we? The meal started pleasantly enough. Philip asked Mildred questions about her life, seeming genuinely interested in her answers. She soaked up the attention, talking non-stop about herself. I noticed Philip kept refilling her wine glass. By the time the main course arrived, she was on her fourth glass and getting loose-lipped. So, Mildred, Philip said casually, tell me more about this apartment you need money for. She launched into a detailed description of a luxury condo with ocean views. It's absolutely perfect, she sighed, but the deposit is killer. And you don't have any savings from your marriage or previous jobs? She waved her hand dismissively. Oh, I've never been good with money. And Richard, my ex, he's being such a jerk about the divorce settlement. That must be tough, Philip said sympathetically. So what's your plan if you can't get the money from family? She took another big sip of wine. Oh, I'll figure something out. I always do. She leaned in conspiratorially. Between you and me, I've got a few tricks up my sleeve. Like what? Philip prompted. She giggled. Well, that police report was just the beginning. If that didn't work, I was thinking of calling some of your big clients, telling them some sob stories about how you mistreat your poor mother. I gasped. Larry's hand tightened around his fork. Philip just nodded calmly. That's an interesting strategy. So the whole thing about being homeless was just a lie to get money from me? She shrugged. Not entirely. I do need a place to stay, but maybe not as desperately as I made it sound. She laughed. You should have seen your dad's face when I cried at your house. He was ready to write me a check on the spot. So you admit you were manipulating us? Philip asked, his voice still casual. Oh, come on. It's not manipulation. It's just knowing which buttons to push. She winked at him. You're my son. You should want to help me. Even though you abandoned me and rejected me when I tried to reach out to you as a kid, her face hardened slightly. That was different. I wasn't ready to be a mother then. And now you're ready to be a mother when you need money? She rolled her eyes. Don't be so dramatic. This is how family works. You help each other out. By lying and filing false police reports? She leaned back in her chair. Look, I did what I had to do, and I'd do it again if I needed to. That's just who I am. Philip smiled and reached into his pocket. He pulled out his phone and tapped the screen a few times. Thanks for clarifying that, Mildred. I just wanted to make sure I understood exactly where we stand. Her eyes narrowed. What do you mean? He turned his phone around to show her the screen. It was a recording app, and it had been running the entire time. The color drained from her face. You recorded me? Yep, every word, including your admission that you lied about needing money to avoid homelessness, that you filed a false police report, and that you were planning to contact my clients with more lies if that didn't work. You can't do that. That's illegal, she sputtered. Actually, in this state, only one party needs to consent to a recording. That would be me. He pocketed his phone. I think we're done here. Mildred looked around wildly, as if searching for an escape route. You wouldn't really use that against me, would you? I'm your mother. No, Philip said firmly. Margaret is my mother. Larry is my father. You're just someone who gave birth to me and then decided I wasn't worth your time until you wanted something from me. He stood up, dropping several $100 bills on the table. Dinner's on me. Enjoy the rest of your meal if you want. We're leaving. As we walked out, I heard Mildred call after us, her voice desperate now. Philip, wait, I'm sorry. We can work this out. But Philip didn't look back. None of us did. In the parking lot, I hugged my son tight. I'm so proud of you, I whispered. Thanks, Mom, he said, but it's not over yet. What do you mean? Larry asked. Philip checked his watch. By now, Amber has uploaded the full audio recording to my social media accounts, along with a statement explaining the situation. The truth is finally out there for everyone to hear. I checked my phone. Sure enough, there it was. A post from Philip's business account with the recording and a simple, straightforward explanation of the events of the past few weeks. You planned all this? I asked, amazed. He nodded. I knew she wouldn't be able to resist bragging about her schemes if she thought she was winning. People like Mildred always want credit for how clever they think they are. We drove home in silence, each lost in our own thoughts. I kept thinking about how Philip had handled the whole situation, with dignity, intelligence, and a level head. He'd outmaneuvered Mildred at every turn without stooping to her level. The fallout was swift and severe. By the next morning, Mildred's social media accounts were flooded with negative comments. People who had initially sympathized with her were now calling her out for her manipulation and lies. The few friends who had stood by her quickly distanced themselves. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Then came the final confrontation. 3 days after the dinner, Mildred showed up at Philip's business again. This time she wasn't shouting. She looked defeated, broken. I was there helping with some paperwork when she walked in. Philip saw her and sighed. What now, Mildred? He asked wearily. You've ruined me, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. My friends won't talk to me. I can't get a job because that recording is everywhere. I really am going to be homeless now. Philip looked at her for a long moment. That's not my problem, he finally said. She took a step toward him, her face twisting with anger. How can you be so cold? I gave you life, and then you threw me away, he replied calmly. You made your choices, Mildred. Now you're facing the consequences. She lunged forward suddenly, her hand raised as if to slap him. I jumped up, ready to intervene, but Philip caught her wrist midair. Don't, he said quietly. Just don't. The fight seemed to drain out of her all at once. She sagged, tears streaming down her face. What am I supposed to do now? She whispered. For a moment, I saw a flicker of compassion in Philip's eyes. Despite everything, part of him still cared about the woman who had given birth to him. Get help, he said gently. Real help. For whatever issues make you treat people this way. And then maybe, someday, we can try to have some kind of relationship, but not like this. Never like this. He released her wrist and stepped back. I'm not giving you money. I'm not letting you manipulate me or my parents anymore. This ends now. She stared at him for a long moment, then turned and walked out without another word. As the door closed behind her, Philip let out a long breath. I went to him and put my arm around his shoulders. Are you okay? I asked. He nodded slowly. Yeah, I think I finally am. I didn't see Mildred for almost 2 weeks after that confrontation at Philip's shop. I kept expecting her to pop up again with some new scheme, but there was nothing. Just silence. I was starting to think maybe she'd finally gotten the message and moved on. Then one morning, I was checking my email and saw something that made my stomach drop. It was from Mildred, sent to me, Larry, and Philip. The subject line just said, goodbye. I opened it with shaking hands. It was short, just a few lines about how she couldn't handle the public humiliation anymore and was going to end it all. Classic Mildred, always with the drama. But what if she was serious this time? I called Philip immediately. Did you see the email? I asked as soon as he picked up. Yeah, I saw it. He sighed. Don't worry, Mom. She's not going to hurt herself. yourself. How can you be so sure? I was already grabbing my car keys, ready to drive to her last known address, because I just got a notification that she posted on Instagram 10 minutes ago, a selfie at some coffee shop with the caption, "New beginnings." I collapsed back into my chair, relief washing over me. So it's just another manipulation tactic. Exactly. She's hoping we'll panic and reach out, maybe offer money to help her get back on her feet after her darkest moment. I had to admit, he had her number. What should we do? Nothing, he said firmly. Absolutely nothing. And that's what we did. None of us responded to the email. Philip blocked her on all his social media and changed his phone number. Larry and I did the same. It felt harsh, but necessary. Like cutting out a cancer before it could spread further. Life started getting back to normal. Philip's business recovered from the temporary hit to its reputation. In fact, the whole drama had actually brought him some new customers who admired how he'd handled the situation. People love a good redemption story, I guess. About a month after the sewers light email, I was at the grocery store when my cart accidentally bumped into someone else's. I looked up to apologize and found myself face to face with Richard, Mildred's ex-husband. "Margaret," he said, looking surprised. "Is that you?" I hadn't seen Richard in years, not since before the divorce. He looked older, of course, but good, healthy, happy. "Richard, hi," I said, not sure what else to say. "What's the proper etiquette when you run into your estranged daughter's ex-husband?" He saved me from having to figure it out. "I heard about what happened with Mildred and Philip. I'm really sorry." I shrugged. "It's not your fault." "No, but," he hesitated. "I feel like I should have warned you." When she started talking about reconnecting with Philip, I knew she was up to something. She'd just maxed out all her credit cards and was looking for a new source of cash. "So she really was broke?" I asked. He nodded. "Oh yeah, but not because I cut her off like she claimed. The divorce settlement was more than fair. She just blows through money like water." We ended up getting coffee after finishing our shopping. Richard filled me in on a lot of things I hadn't known. How Mildred had cheated on him multiple times. How she'd emptied their joint savings account before telling him she wanted a divorce. How she'd tried to turn their friends against him with lies about abuse. "It's like she can't help herself," he said, stirring his coffee absently. "She sees people as resources to be used, not as human beings." I thought about all the times I'd made excuses for Mildred's behavior when she was growing up. The stolen money from my purse that I convinced myself I'd misplaced. The lies about where she was going that I pretended to believe because the truth was too painful. The way I'd let her manipulate Larry over and over. I enabled her, I admitted, for years. Richard reached across the table and patted my hand. We all did, in our own ways. But Philip didn't. "That kid of yours has a strong backbone." I smiled, pride swelling in my chest. "Yes, he does. When I got home, I told Larry about running into Richard. He says Mildred's moved to Arizona, started fresh with a new group of people who don't know her history." Larry just nodded, looking tired. The whole ordeal had aged him. He'd taken it harder than me in some ways, especially after almost falling for her manipulation that day at our house. Good, maybe she'll stay there. But of course, that wasn't the end of it. Nothing ever is with Mildred. 3 months later, Philip and Amber got engaged. They decided to have a small party at their house to celebrate, just family and close friends. About 20 people total. I was in the kitchen helping Amber set up the food when the doorbell rang. I heard Philip answer it, then silence. Too much silence. I peeked around the corner and felt my heart sink. Mildred was standing in the doorway, holding a gift bag and smiling like she'd been invited. "Surprise," she said, trying to push past Philip into the house. "I heard my baby boy is getting married." Philip blocked her entry. "How did you find out about this? How did you even know where I live?" She waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, I have my ways. Aren't you going to invite me in? I brought champagne." I stepped forward, ready to back Philip up, but he gave me a look that said he had this handled. "Mildred," he said calmly, "you weren't invited." Her smile faltered. "But I'm your mother. Of course I should be at your engagement party." "No, you're not invited," he repeated, "and you're not welcome here." Her face darkened. "Is this because of that little misunderstanding we had? I thought we were past that." "It wasn't a misunderstanding. You tried to extort money from me, filed a false police report against me, and threatened to destroy my business. Then you sent a fake sewer slide threat when that didn't work." She had the audacity to look offended. "I was in a bad place. You could show a little compassion." By this point, other guests had noticed the commotion. They were watching curiously from inside. I saw Amber coming up behind Philip, her face concerned. "What's going on?" she asked. "Nothing," Philip said, not taking his eyes off Mildred. She was just leaving. Mildred's gaze shifted to Amber, and I saw something ugly flash in her eyes. "So you're the one who's taking my son away from me?" Amber blinked in surprise. "Excuse me? He was going to help me until you turned him against me," Mildred hissed. "You think you're so perfect with your pretty face and your—" "That's enough," Philip cut her off, his voice hard. "You need to leave, now, or I'm calling the police." She looked around, seeming to realize for the first time that she had an audience. People were watching her with expressions ranging from confusion to disgust. She was losing, and she knew it. "Fine," she snapped, shoving the gift bag at Philip. "I just wanted to give you this, to show there are no hard feelings." Philip took the bag cautiously. He peeked inside, then closed it quickly. His face went pale. "Get out," he said, his voice shaking slightly. "And don't ever contact me or my family again." She smirked, thinking she'd scored a point. "Enjoy your party," she said sweetly, then turned and walked back to her car. As soon as she drove away, I rushed to Philip. What was in the bag? He handed it to me wordlessly. I looked inside and felt sick. It was a baby onesie with grandma's favorite printed on it, and a note that said, "When you have kids, I'll be part of their lives whether you like it or not." The party mood was dampened after that. Philip tried to put on a brave face, but I could tell he was rattled. The idea of Mildred trying to worm her way into his future children's lives clearly disturbed him. Later that night, after most of the guests had left, Philip, Amber, Larry, and I sat in their living room trying to figure out what to do. "We could get a restraining order," Larry suggested. "On what grounds?" Philip asked. "She hasn't technically threatened us." "That onesie felt pretty threatening to me," Amber said quietly. She'd been unusually silent all evening. I reached over and squeezed her hand. "We won't let her anywhere near your future children, honey. I promise." Philip ran his hands through his hair in frustration. "I thought I'd handled this. I thought she'd finally gotten the message. People like Mildred don't change," I said sadly. "They just find new angles." We didn't come up with any concrete solutions that night, but we agreed to be vigilant. Philip installed security cameras at their house the next day, just in case. Weeks passed with no sign of Mildred. The wedding plans progressed. Amber found a beautiful dress. They booked a venue for the following spring. Life went on. Then one evening, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. Against my better judgment, I answered it. "Hello, is this Margaret?" a woman's voice asked. "Yes, who's this?" "My name is Janice. I'm Richard's new partner. Mildred's ex-husband." My guard went up immediately. "How did you get my number?" "From Richard. He thought you should know. Mildred's been arrested." I sat down hard on the nearest chair. "Arrested? For what?" "Credit card fraud. She stole Richard's card information and ran up thousands in charges. But that's not why I'm calling." She paused. She had a notebook. The police found it when they searched her apartment. It had all these plans, ways to get money from Philip, details about his business, his home address, even Amber's work schedule. It was disturbing. My blood ran cold. "Have you told the police about her history with Philip?" "Richard is talking to them now. They're taking it seriously. With the fraud charges and this evidence of stalking, they're pushing for jail time." I thanked her for the information and immediately called Philip. He and Amber came right over, and we filled them in on what Janice had told me. "So she's been watching us?" Amber asked, her voice small. "All this time?" Philip put his arm around her. "It's going to be okay. She can't hurt us now." We later learned that Mildred had been planning to approach Amber when she was alone, to try to convince her to pressure Philip into helping out his poor mother. There were notes about using the future grandchildren as leverage. It was calculated and cold, and it sent chills down my spine. Mildred ended up getting 18 months for the fraud charges. The evidence of stalking helped secure the sentence, even though they couldn't charge her separately for that without more direct proof of intent to harm. The day she was sentenced, Philip, Larry, and I sat in the courtroom watching. She didn't look at us once, didn't acknowledge our presence in any way. It was like we were strangers. As they led her away, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Sadness for the daughter I'd lost long ago, relief that she couldn't hurt us anymore, at least for a while, and a deep, profound gratitude for the son who had stood his ground and protected his family. The wedding went ahead as planned the following spring. It was beautiful. Amber was radiant, and Philip couldn't stop smiling. They decided on a small ceremony in a garden, with just their closest friends and family. During the reception, Philip pulled me aside. "I have something for you," he said, handing me a small box. Inside was a delicate silver bracelet with a single charm, a heart. "What's this for?" I asked, blinking back tears. "For being my real mom," he said simply. "For loving me when she couldn't or wouldn't." I hugged him tight, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. Later, as Larry and I were slow dancing, I spotted Philip and Amber across the room. They were laughing about something, their heads close together, completely wrapped up in each other and their future. "We did good with him," Larry murmured in my ear. I nodded, resting my head on his shoulder. "Yes, we did." Mildred was released after serving 14 months. She didn't try to contact us again. According to Richard, who heard from a mutual friend, she moved to Florida and started over again. Sometimes I wonder if she ever thinks about what she lost. Not the money she tried to extort, but the relationship with her son. The chance to know him as the amazing man he became. The opportunity to be part of his life, his wedding, his future family. But mostly, I'm just grateful. Grateful that Philip found the strength to stand up to her manipulation. Grateful that he chose to break the cycle rather than enable it. Grateful that, despite everything, he still has the capacity to love and trust. 2 years after the wedding, Amber gave birth to twins, a boy and a girl. Philip called us from the hospital, his voice choked with emotion. "They're perfect, Mom," he said. "Absolutely perfect." When we arrived at the hospital, he placed his daughter in my arms. "Meet your granddaughter, Margaret," he said softly. I looked down at her tiny face, so peaceful in sleep, and felt my heart expand. This was what family should be. Not manipulation or obligation or guilt, just love, freely given and gratefully received. As for Mildred, well, she made her choices, and we made ours.